Hola estudiantes! Today we're going to be talking about the subjunctive and when to use it. This is kind of exciting because it opens up whole new worlds to us, but it's kind of not exciting because it's hard to understand, mainly because it's different than English. So let's get going. Ya quiero que sea sábado. I want it to be Saturday. We can all understand that. So, ¿cuándo lo usamos? When the heck do we use it? So the real true question about subjunctive conjugating is easy, but the question is, when and how do we use it? The interesting thing is it's used a lot more in Spanish than it is in English. A lot of the English uses have even gone away and people are using it incorrectly. So we're going to try and figure out when are we going to be using this in Español. In Inglés. If you notice here, it says, I wish I was an ice cube. That would explain how you make me melt. This is grammatically incorrect in English. People use it wrong all the time in English. And I say, ¿por qué no es correcto? Porque it should be, if I wish I were an ice cube. It's contrary to fact. I am not an ice cube. I wish I were an ice cube. But that's how the subjunctive should be used in Inglés, but we don't even do that all the time. Here's another example. Justin Bieber, sorry bud, you're not using the subjunctive correctly. So hopefully we can figure out how to correctly do this in Spanish. I'm giving up on your English. One way that Señora Rivera explains her subjunctive is that she talks about moving to California. She says she's going to get a U-Haul and she's pulling her little yeda all the way to California. So what we got here, how she's explaining this, is that you're taking this U-Haul and that's your indicative clause. So in between the thing pulling and towing your truck is going to be the K, and it's going to pull along the dependent clause, that one can't stand alone. It's dependent on the fact that I want you to study Spanish. So the main clause is what we call indicative. Everything we've learned up to now is indicative. That is like the present tense, the preterite, the imperfect, all of those are indicative in the real world, we'll say, to kind of simplify it. So the dependent clause here is, I want that you study Spanish. I want you to study Spanish. Does that mean it's going to happen? No, it doesn't. So the fact that you guys are studying Spanish is attached to my yo quiero que estudien español. I want that you study Spanish. Notice also, we're going to get to this, that there's a change in subject. It's my wish being imposed upon other people. So that's going to be important. Another teacher that I've worked with has gone with the whole iPod method. And she has it like it's a separate menu completely. And I like this visual to see that, look, we have the indicative and we have the subjunctive. And if you were to click on one of these menu tenses, you would notice that there's a whole list of tenses for each mood. So we're not talking about a different tense that we're teaching you. We're talking about a different mood. So the indicative tense has presente, pretérito, imperfecto, the presente perfecto, futuro, condicional. There's all those different tenses under the indicative. However, if you were to open up that subjuntivo button, you would see that they have their own tenses as well. Right now we're focusing on the present subjunctive, but there's also a past subjunctive. There's also a present perfect subjunctive. So there's other tenses within the subjunctive mood. But again, right now let's just focus on the present. El subjuntivo, usos. So one simplified way that we're going to do this is that when you have a person that wants, suggests, or demands that somebody else do something, here's the key. It's one person wants somebody else. There is a change in subject. Then we're going to use the subjunctive mood in the subordinate clause that's followed by the word K. So that word K, that means that without an accent, you're going to be seeing that all over the place this chapter. So we're going to use that K to separate our two clauses and be able to, the first one will be present or in the indicative, and the second clause is going to be in the subjunctive. Here's a couple examples. Yo quiero que respires lentamente. I want you to breathe slowly. Sugiero que bebas agua antes de correr. I suggest that you drink water before you run. So it's my suggestion that you drink water. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. El entrenador exige que los atletas estiren los músculos. He's demanding that the athletes stretch their muscles. So it's him demanding that other people, he's putting that upon somebody else. If you remember the sheet that you were given in class, it had this whole graph. This is going to last us all through Spanish 3, all through Spanish 4. We're not focusing on all this right now, so try not to get overwhelmed. So we're going to break this down a little bit, but the main reasons for using the subjunctive are the WEIRDO ink. So if you use the WEIRDO ink, you'll have all the uses. But in Español 3, we are just going to be focusing on a few of these. Usos del subjuntivo. If you notice, we have our W is wish or will. E is emotions. I, impersonal expressions. R, requests. De, doubt or denial. Ojalá, that's a word that just means, oh, may Allah grant. I really, really hope. Indefinite, non-existent, and conjunctions are all things we're leaving for Spanish for. But we want you to at least have an overview of everything that we'll get to. So we're going to be mainly focusing on WEIRDO this year, and this chapter we're going to really focus on the W, the R, and the I. So wish, will, impersonal expressions, and requests. So starting with the wish and will and requests, the main thing to remember is that you're going to take and you have to have a change of subject between the two. So if you notice, I put some verbs on here, things like desear, insistir, necesitar, preferir, querer, and sugerir. These are all verbs that are going to help trigger that subjunctive if you have a change in subject. Look at the two examples that I put there. Yo quiero que estudies. I want you to study. Necesitamos que vayas. We need you to leave. So it's our need imposed upon somebody else. Deseo que tú estudies. I want you to study. So then I'm going to show you an example here too of what happens if there's not a change of subject. If there's no change of subject, we go back to Español 1, Español 2, and we say, use the infinitive. Yo deseo estudiar. I want to study. You cannot put yo deseo que estudie. I want myself to study. You just leave it unconjugated. So here we've got yo quiero que respires lentamente. These are the ones we already went over. But I was just showing you again that that's my wish or will, or my suggestion or request being imposed upon somebody else. The other one that we're going to focus on this chapter is impersonal expressions. All of these start with es bueno, es importante, es necesario, es probable. The key thing here is that you also have to have that que. Es bueno que, es importante que, es necesario que. Es triste que seas tonto. It's sad that you're dumb. But if you notice, if it were completely impersonal and we didn't have that que, you go back to Español 1 and say, es triste ser tonto. It is sad to be dumb. Then we're being very general instead of it's sad that you're dumb, because it's good that you study is my opinion being imposed upon you. It's important that you learn Spanish. That's my opinion being imposed upon you. So here we have, es necesario que hagas ejercicio. Es importante que los jóvenes coman bien. It's important that they eat well. So these expressions, if they have a que and they're attached to a conjugated to a person, it's necessary that you do exercise. It's important that the youth eat well. If I'm attaching it to something after a que, it triggers the subjunctive. So we're going to leave you now here with una frase, solamente quiero que seas tú. How romántico. I only want that you be yourself. So your assignment is to come to class tomorrow with at least one question about all of this stuff that I have just gone over. So think about, what are you confused about? Ask some clarifying questions. You can either text them to my Google Voice number, or you can write it down on paper and bring it in. So we're going to be talking in class tomorrow, trying to make sure we're wrapping all of our heads around this. Gracias. Adios.